Over the last few sessions, we've been unpacking this idea that John is coming as the forerunner to fulfill the dreams that people have lived with for nearly 700 years, and waiting for the Messiah to come, and waiting for the forerunner to come to announce the arrival of the King. And we've seen that John is coming to announce that arrival with all the pageantry of rolling out the red carpet, of challenging us to create straight roads, to remove the obstacles so that people can access the King and the King can access them, to establish a new type of kingdom, a spiritual kingdom of heaven that's here both now and for eternity. And we're invited to live in that kingdom. And that means that we have a question to ask. How do we become citizens of this new kingdom that we've been unpacking? John's message was this. He was preaching salvation that came through the forgiveness of sins, that came through repentance, and was evidenced by turning to God, turning away from the old, turning to the new, and getting baptized as an evidence of living for that every single day. This story is being told by Luke, and Luke was a Gentile doctor. He wasn't a Jew. He was a Gentile doctor. And that meant that for Luke, he would know only too well what it was like to live in an Israel that saw Gentiles as being unclean, of being excluded by the Jews from access to the temple areas where the presence of God was. There was a whole court of the Gentiles that you couldn't go through the gate into the inner area if you were a Gentile, if you were unclean. And what Luke is telling us in this message, what Luke is telling us through his account, is that Jesus is eliminating the barriers between man and God. He's eliminating the ethnic, cultural, national, racist identity that can creep in, that defines who is and who isn't acceptable. And Jesus is eliminating those barriers. Israel was always supposed to be a light for the nations. They were supposed to be this vineyard that was a vineyard for the nations, that was supposed to be a spreading vine that was there to produce the bounty of God and bless the nations. But they hadn't fulfilled their purpose. And so now we see that John is heralding the way as the forerunner, saying that the King is now coming to show how you can become a citizen of the kingdom. That call of John to make straight paths is literally to make crooked paths straight. And it's sometimes looked at as a crooked and corrupt generation. There's like a picture here that the crooked paths are actually a crooked or corrupt generation. And so there's a need to deal with that corruption. When we think of corruption, we think in terms of financial corruption, or we think in terms of injustice when it comes to corruption. You know, the bent judge, the bent lawyer who's going to, corrupt the system by letting the guilty go free and convicting the innocent. We rise up against all forms of corruption, all forms of injustice. But the corruption that we see here is a corruption of hearts. It's a corruption caused by sin. And that sin is a poison that destroys God's valuable creation. God created it good. I heard that a pope once said one of the reasons God hates sin so much is because of the damage it causes his people. And so when we look at sin, we have to understand that sin is a corruption. And when John is saying that we need to make the crooked things straight, he's talking about the importance of repairing or healing, of rebuilding things that are broken. In other words, he's saying that the King is coming to restore what's been broken. We see that sin creates a debt between man and God that could not be paid by us. Consequently, he's coming to settle the debts. There's a restitution. We also see that this relationship is broken, the rubbish has got in the way, and so the King is coming to bring us back into relationship. In other words, he's coming to bring reconciliation.